Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 4 articles in this episode for you. The URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. And let's just go ahead and start right on into them because it looks like we've got audio and everything working here. This is off of latimes.com. And it says, Northern California braces for flooding. Don Pedro spillway opened. Water came gushing down the spillway at Don Pedro Dam in Stanislaus County Monday afternoon. Further proof, if any were needed, that this is a rainy season for the record books in much of California. It was only the second time the spillway had been used, and the first time in 20 years as officials sought to keep the Don Pedro Reservoir from overflowing. Residents along the, and I'm not sure I can pronounce this correctly, I'm not from California, Tuolumne River, you folks in California will know what I'm talking about. We're not forced to evacuate, but we are strongly encouraging people to seek shelter and move to higher ground, Stanislaus County Christensen said at a news conference. Our number one priority is the safety and security in Stanislaus County. The Don Pedro release came as much of a state's northern half was being hit with a colossal drenching. One expected to drop as much as 9 inches of rain in areas from Santa Cruz County along the coast to Feather River Basin. People living along waterways braced for flood or flash floods and evacuations. It came with fresh of the crisis that developed just over a week ago at the Oroville Dam, some 180 miles to the north. Both spillways were damaged, and fears of catastrophic the evacuation of more than 100,000 people. Turlock Irrigation District officials said Monday that the structural integrity of the Don Pedro Dam and spillway are not in question. Of water being released would be far less 7 when major flooding occurred. The Don Pedro spillway will remain open for about 4 days, with water flowing through at 18,000 to 30,000 cubic feet per second. Many parts of the region, especially in the San Joaquin and Sacramento, and Sacramento River valleys and Sierra Nevada, are on track to have the wettest winter on record. Numerous reservoirs are close to capacity and rivers are primed for flooding. Emergency officials across many parts of the state coordinated to keep a close eye on the storm at a command post near Sacramento. Residents to put together a go bag containing important items such as medications and hard to replace documents, as well as to plan for the needs of pets and other animals. They also urged people to stay informed of the non-emergency numbers to their local authorities. So far, it's been a lot of getting ready and hoping everything goes well, said Brad Alexander, spokesman for the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. We're hoping we won't need to use all our resources. By noon Monday, the first wave of the storm had moved through, but forecasters said the heaviest rain was expected to hit on Monday evening and Tuesday. On Sunday, the Weather Service warned that Bernalis has reached danger stage, greater risk for levee problems. There were several areas at risk along the river, including Stevenson and Newman. Officials also said several other waterways were at major risk of flooding, including the Yolo bypass, Sacramento, Cosumnes, Mokelumne, there's that word again, I think it's Tuolumne rivers. Rains were also pounding coastal areas. Flash flood warnings were issued for parts of Big Sur, parts of Sonoma County, and communities in the hills above Santa Cruz. Flight delays were hitting San Francisco International Airport. South of San Jose, Coyote Creek was at risk of exceeding flood levels at Evendale. Or I believe that's Edenvale. There we go. Monday night, rising floodwaters prompted Lake County authorities to order some residents to leave their homes, and San Joaquin County officials ordered evacuations following a levee breach along the San Joaquin River. In Maxwell, a small rural town in Colusa County, Saturday had to evacuate 100 people, some by boat, about 2 a.m. because of the flooding. Trouble is, we're getting a lot of rain in an already saturated from previous storms, said Colusa County Sheriff Lieutenant Neil Pearson, age 52, a lifelong resident of the farming country northwest of Sacramento. Is pooling up in the northern San Joaquin Valley Basin, overwhelming our creeks, gullies, sloughs, ditches, and rice fields. Maxwell is about 50 miles from Oroville, which for the last week has been the scene of a national drama as officials work furiously to lower the lake level and repair the damaged emergency spillway at Oroville Dam. Continued fortifying, eroding fissures on the adjacent hillsides with rocks and cement. They used cranes on floating barges to yank tons of debris from the murky pool of water at the bottom of one of the spillways. A 5-foot increase in the elevation of water behind Oroville Dam by midnight, said Bill Croyle of the California Department of Water Resources. But he said the water would be absorbed in the reservoir, had been drained down to 849 feet, which is 51 feet below capacity. Attacking the debris beneath the spillway is a priority for us, he said, but the spillway remains stable, although we see occasional additional erosion here and there. The dam began earlier this month after state officials began sending water down the facility's main concrete spillway. The flows were halted after engineers discovered that a huge jagged crater had opened up in the chute. Since then, the hole has grown to 500 feet in length and 45 feet deep, allowing releases of water down the damaged spillway to carve immense gullies in adjacent, shouldering the right side of the nation's tallest dam. The agency may eventually decide to scrap the damaged main spillway and replace it with a new one. Everything's on the table, he said. Have the main and emergency spillways fully functional again before the next flood season begins. As of Monday, the estimated cost of the effort to shore up the spillways had climbed to more than $22 million, according to a state incident report. Towns like Maxwell, officials focused on keeping the public safe. California, Pearson said, flooding spreads over covering rural roads that crisscross farmlands that serve travelers from across the state. Choose to ignore blockade signs that say stop, road closed, dangerous flooding ahead, he said. Next thing you know, in water and calling for someone to help them get out. The next article that I have for you on Natural News, and it says, pay attention to these 3 financial experts if you want to survive the coming financial superstorm. Michael Pinto, James Rickards, and Gerald Celente. With all-out warning that horrific financial apocalypse is coming during President Trump's first term. See my mini documentary video below in this article. Pull up this URL and you can watch that. As a laboratory scientist, I've long had a natural gift for mathematics, and I can assure you that the mathematics of today's global debt leverage fiasco point to a 100% certainty of a colossal correction in the very near future. Percent known, in other words, that the Ponzi scheme of central banks, fiat currency, and runaway global debt will come to a catastrophic end. The only unknowns are the exact nature of the timing of the tipping point event that will push it over the edge. No one can accurately predict that timing, but geopolitical forces increasingly point to a high likelihood of it cratering during Donald Trump's first term as president. Why I listen to Michael Pinto, James Rickards, and Gerald Celente. To stay informed on these issues, I make a point to read books and listen to interviews by intelligent, informed financial analysts who also have the backbone to speak out against the insanely stupid status quo. Three of those informed, gutsy financial analysts are Michael Pinto, James Rickards, and Gerald Celente. I also listened to Charles Nenner, Reno, and John Williams, too, among others. In my opinion, if you're not staying up to date on these three brilliant financial analysts, you're not really prepared for the financial collapse that's coming. Point you toward called collapse.news formed. It says, while critics might say these people are always preaching doom and gloom, that's only because financial doom has genuinely been on the verge of being triggered for so many years now. Incompetence, greed, and stupidity are coalescing toward a catastrophic collapse, and it's the status quo propaganda pushers claiming everything is awesome earned the worst. Check out the video interviews below to hear each of these three analysts explaining what they see unfolding in 2017 and beyond. Shout out to Greg Hunter at usawatchdog.com, who continues to prove himself as one of the most honest, reliable, and high integrity independent journalists on the net. I've told my programmers to add usawatchdog.com to censored.news so you can follow his headlines as they're released. And it gives the videos here on all of those people he talked about, and it has his own analysis. And there's another video here called Blaming Donald Trump for the Inevitable Economic Collapse video if you want to see that. So all those are in that URL for your convenience. The next one here is off of Natural News. And it says, attempted takedown of Milo Yiannopoulos, a coordinated barrage of research to character assassinate conservative voices. In case you haven't noticed, Milo Yiannopoulos, the outspoken gay conservative entertainer who baits leftists into fits of uncontrollable rage, is under siege for comments he made in two older videos. I've watched the videos, and it seems clear to me that he's advocating or apologizing for intimate gay relationships between older men and younger boys. This is why he's under fire, and his #1 pre-selling book has already been yanked by Simon & Schuster. Reportedly, Breitbart.com is also considering cutting ties with Milo, and he's already been dumped as a speaker by CPAC. This article came out before I heard today that Milo had actually resigned from Breitbart. Have that, but I'll go on with this article. It says, for the record, we here at Natural News find anything smacking of pedophilia or the exploitation of children to be abhorrent and sickening. Yet it is quite curious to consider the timing of all this, especially just days after I received a threatening demand that I personally destroy Alex Jones or be destroyed by the mainstream media. The proximity of these events is not a coincidence. The Soros-funded smear machine of the anti-American left has assembled a massive portfolio of OPPO research to assassinate all prominent Trump supporters. InfoWars' Alex Jones is probably their #1 target, and they attempted to dump a dossier in my lap that they believed would destroy Alex Jones. I refused to participate in their smear campaign, which of course means they now have to make an example out of me. So watch for releases over the next few days of deceptively edited audio, video, or articles, text that will be used to attempt to smear my character. Fortunately, I never said anything as crazy sounding as Milo's comments about the age of consent. Nevertheless, in watching the attempted takedown on Milo, I see exactly what the character assassins on the left are doing. It's timed, well-funded, and heavily strategized, cascading series of character assassinations designed to eliminate President Trump's most vocal defenders as a prelude to taking out Trump himself. Once Trump's defenders can be silenced or intimidated, of demands for Trump to be impeached will meet little resistance. Let's be honest. If Milo Yiannopoulos were a Democrat, he would have already been forgiven, apologized for, and celebrated as a victim. Yet this takedown of Milo is full of hypocrisy that it's almost as sickening as Milo's apparent words about older men having sexual relationships with younger boys. Let's be honest. If Milo were a Democrat, this would be a non-scandal. and the left would have already forgiven, apologized, and even celebrated Milo as a victim. Case in point, Lena Dunham, a celebrated feminist who is lauded by none other than Hillary Clinton. Dunham, or try this again, a celebrated feminist who is lauded by none other than Hillary Clinton. Dunham openly admits to sexually molesting her younger sister, and that is via truthrevolt.org. Her newly published collection of personal essays, Not That Kind of Girl, Lena Dunham described experimenting sexually with her younger sister, Grace, whom she says she attempted to persuade to kiss her, a sexual predator might do. In one particularly unsettling passage, Dunham experimented with her 6-year-old, or try this again, her 6-year younger sister's vagina. This was within the spectrum of things I did, she writes. Of nonfiction personal accounts, Dunham describes using her little sister, at times essentially as the sex outlet, bribing her to kiss her for prolonged periods, and even masturbating while she is in the bed beside her. But perhaps the most disturbing is an account she has an episode that occurred when she was 7 and her sister was 1. Personally, all these things described by both Lena Dunham and Milo Yiannopoulos sound a bit sickening and disturbing to me, but there is a gross double standard at work in how these two people are being judged by society. Lena is automatically forgiven and celebrated, while Milo is automatically condemned as vile, even though he was the younger boy in the sexual relationships he talks about, not the older man. I'm not excusing his words, mind you. I personally find them to be rather twisted and abhorrent, but what's even more twisted is the wildly inconsistent way which people are judged in our society based solely on their political leanings. Lena is a celebrated heroine because, well, she's a progressive. Milo's considered a sicko because he's a gay conservative, a Trump supporter, by God. The double standard is suffocating. If Milo is bad, why isn't Lena just as bad? And why can't anybody dare talk about the pizza parlor pedos in Washington, D.C. without being threatened into silence like what happened to Ben Swan? Nobody can survive extreme scrutiny on everything they've ever uttered. There's another deeper principle in all this. Research is designed to dig through everything you've ever uttered, every word, ever written, every video you've ever posted, etc., and then assemble a highly edited smear collage that makes you look like an evil, demented, human-hating monster. All of us who dare speak out against the status quo have been subjected to these smear collages. We've had our words taken wildly out of context. We've all had our podcasts or videos chopped and reassembled like we said things we never actually said. If you don't think CNN selectively edits audio and video to twist around everything you've said, you have no idea how the fake news media really operates. Position research, and I'm here to tell you that nobody can survive extreme scrutiny unscathed, not even you. Can you imagine what would happen if the entire world were made aware of some of the more insensitive, stupid, and downright politically incorrect statements you've uttered in the privacy of your own home? What if you had a radio show that you filled with 2 or 3 hours of audio, day after day, over a decade? Of the most insane and crazy things you've ever said is simply a matter of funding the person hours required to dig through it all. With enough cash thrown at the effort, anyone can be made to look like a total bag. And with that said, some people really are total sleazebags, and exposing them is a great service to humanity if it's pursued with honest intent. I've done that myself with some biotech industry sleazebags who deserve to be outed for beating their wives, committing journalistic fraud, and so on. But in other cases, perfectly reasonable human beings can be made to look like sleazebags through dishonest, deceptive opposition research that's funded by political opponents. While I think some of his views on sexuality are twisted and bizarre, I don't think he's an evil person, but that's beside the point. He will be described as a pedophile by the left-wing media precisely because it's in their political interest to do so. smear to justify the mob violence at UC Berkeley, for example, where leftists openly declared that they had the right to murder conservative speakers because they believed that Milo's words were a form of violence against them. Now, with the pedophile smear being flung around the hysterical corporate-run media, left-wing journalists can, in essence, justify the violence against Milo by claiming he's a danger to society due to his sexual proclivities. If the left is so concerned about pedophilia, where are the investigative articles exposing Hollywood? In reality, the left doesn't care one bit about sexual perversion or even pedophilia. Their goal is to silence every gay conservative voice that's gaining traction in modern society. Sadly, Milo's loose lips, and I'm sure there's to be found somewhere in that phrase, have torpedoed his own ship. And there's yet another sick joke to be explored. And he's inadvertently handed the media exactly the kind of depth charges they needed to sink him for good. And even pointing this out, I will no doubt be accused of somehow endorsing every word Milo ever uttered, even the ones I find rather sickening and repulsive. Yet the hypocrisy in how Milo's being crucified while left-leaning activists who have done far, far worse are excused is just too overbearing to ignore. There's no longer any objective, fair sense of real justice in the way society judges people for what they've said. The reaction all comes down to politics. For example, any person who 8 years ago said they wanted to murder Barack Obama was condemned as a racist, bigoted KKK fan club member. Yet when Madonna says she thought about blowing up the White House to obviously kill Donald Trump, she's loudly applauded by the left for her resistance and bravery. Of those double standards is far more sickening and twisted than anything Milo Yiannopoulos uttered. That's why the outrage we witness today in both social media and the fake stream media is so difficult to believe at any level. It's faked, amplified, and focused on political enemies, while the far more sickening problems are covered up by the same fake news media. For example, where is the outrage about pedophilia racket known as Hollywood, where movie directors routinely prey upon young teen actors and force them into predatory relations in exchange for promises to make them famous? The problem that saturates Hollywood is whitewashed precisely because Hollywood is a left-wing bastion of sick social programming that's now pushing the normalization of transgenderism onto children. Many TV sitcoms and movies now frequently depict young children interacting with sex toys or acting out adult roles of sexuality, yet no one bats an eye at the practice. Of young children by Hollywood in the film industry is so epidemic and so sickening that the twisted words of Milo Yiannopoulos pale in comparison. And that doesn't even the organized child sex slave trade in America, reaching clients that reportedly include high-profile bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. I don't know all the details because I fully realize that anyone who attempts to really investigate the child sex rings in D.C. suddenly disappear and is never heard from again. Pandemic in America, but no, Milo Yiannopoulos is not running it. If anything, he's been preyed upon by it and has suffered some mind-twisting exploitation that he still needs to sort out with the help of some professional counseling. But Milo isn't the poster child for the pedo problem in America. He's just the latest example of Soros-funded left using opposition research to try to take out a conservative voice by any means necessary. Again, I don't condone what he said. It sounds twisted to me. Milo needs some serious counseling, and I hope he seeks it out. But on Milo is timed, coordinated, and well-funded takedown onslaught, pure and simple. If he were a Democrat, this wouldn't even be a story. And if he were a Muslim, the DNC would no doubt be voting on an inclusive to adopt Milo as their new poster child for tolerance. And the final article I have for you in this episode is off of Conservative Tribune, and it says, now that Michelle's out of Washington, law enforcement hits her with devastating statement. Sheriff David Clarke is one of the most visible law enforcement officers in the nation, and he's also on record as not being a big fan of the Obamas. Now that they're out of the White House, Clarke is taking aim at Michelle Obama on social media, letting her know what he thought of their departure. In a Twitter post on Friday, Clarke referred to a comment by the former First Lady from 2008 stating that, "For the first time in my life, I'm really proud of my country because it feels like hope is finally making a comeback." Comment was made after her husband's nomination. Clarke's posting had a considerably different take as liberals hated it. Picture of Clarke posing in an uber patriotic Donald Trump shirt. And there's a picture of that in this article if you'd like to see that. Michelle Obama said she was never proud of her country until they elected her husband POTUS, Clarke wrote. "I've never been prouder since we got rid of him." Video in this if you'd like to pull it up and take a look at that. And I'm trying to get past it here so I can read the rest of the article. Some of these sites can get rather that you watch their videos. Oh, now you stop that. No, we're not going to listen to you. Now stop. I mean it. Now. Okay. With you too. You notice that? So let's get this scroll to where we can read it here. Things that seems to have stunned liberals in the media the most about the rise of Donald Trump is that Americans are in fact proud of their country. They aren't believers in revisionist history or the idea that America has to be embarrassed about its own past. Most Americans weren't supporters of the former about only being proud of the country when it nominated her husband. So what's the reaction of the left been? Can you see a microcosm of in some of the responses to Clarke's post? And there's here one says where was the picture taken? The men's room in a dollar store. And one wants him to delete his account off of Twitter. It says, "Lovely. Of course, this is why liberals keep losing elections. They think attacking and scoffing at Americans like Sheriff Clarke is going to help them, and they're wrong. Donald Trump's election is definitive proof that, plenty of people were proud to see Michelle Obama and her family leave the White House and Trump move in." For you in this episode. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. And if you haven't subscribed yet, try that. That way you'll stay informed. See you in the next episode.